Randolph Scott's real name was George Randolph Scott. He was born on January 23, 1898, in Orange County, Virginia. He became a super famous movie star, especially known for playing tough cowboys in Western movies that made him a hero to many people. He grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and came from a well-respected Southern family. His dad, George Grant Scott, was an accountant who worked with numbers and money. His mom, Lucille Crane Scott, made sure the family followed good manners and Southern rules. When Randolph was young, he went to the Georgia Institute of Technology and then to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. That's where he started getting interested in acting and drama. He was good at sports, liked learning, and even served in the military. He joined the army during World War I and went to France, where he worked as an artillery observer, someone who watches where explosions happen. This time in the war taught him to be strong and calm, which helped him later when he became an actor. After the war ended, Scott moved to Los Angeles in the late 1920s because he wanted to work in movies. Some people in his family knew Howard Hughes, who was a famous movie person, and they helped Scott get his first small roles in silent films, movies with no sound. People noticed him pretty quickly because he was tall, looked striking, had a strong square jaw, and seemed very calm and in control. Scott's first movie roles were in films like The Far Call in 1929 and The Virginian in 1929. These movies helped him get started in Hollywood. During the 1930s, he acted in many different kinds of movies: adventure stories, romantic comedies, and crime thrillers. He started getting bigger parts in the early 1930s, and his big break came when he was in movies like The Last of the Mohicans in 1936 and Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm in 1938. But it was Western movies, the cowboy ones, that really made Randolph Scott famous. By the 1940s and 1950s, he had become one of the most well-known and respected Western actors ever. But he didn't really find his perfect type of role until the 1940s. That's when he started doing Western movies, and people loved watching him play these characters. His calm but strong way of acting really connected with audiences. During his amazing career that lasted more than 30 years, Randolph Scott was in over 100 films, and more than 60 of them were Westerns. Unlike a lot of other actors at the time, Scott worked hard to always play the same kind of character. He usually played a cowboy who was alone, did the right thing, protected innocent people, and survived the tough Wild West with quiet strength and honor. He worked a lot with a director named Bud Boetticher and a writer named Burt Kennedy. Together they made some really great Western movies in the 1950s, including 7 Men from Now in 1956, The Tall T in 1957, Ride Lonesome in 1959, and Comanche Station in 1960. These movies, which people sometimes call the Ranon cycle, are now thought of as masterpieces because they tell great stories in simple ways and show what the characters are really thinking deep down. These films showed Scott at his very best as an actor. What made Randolph Scott's acting so great wasn't just that he looked the part, but that he could show inner strength and a personal code of right and wrong without using big gestures or talking too much. He usually played the good guy hero, but his characters weren't boring or simple. They were often men who had been hurt by loss, were tired from fighting, but still always knew right from wrong and stuck to it. This mix of being tough, showing some vulnerability, and having strong values made him a favorite of directors and fans. Unlike other Western stars like John Wayne, whose characters were big and bold and larger than life, Scott's characters were more quiet and thoughtful. He showed a more realistic and understated version of what a tough frontier man was like. He was also really smart with money. He wisely put his money into oil, real estate, and other business deals, which meant he had plenty of money when he retired in the early 1960s after his last film, Ride the High Country in 1962. That movie was a classic directed by Sam Peckinpah, and it was a perfect way to end his career. In that film, Scott starred opposite Joel McCrea as 2 old lawmen facing the end of the Wild West era. It was a beautiful final movie that matched his own goodbye to making films. Throughout his life, Scott was deeply respected in Hollywood. People admired him for being professional, disciplined, and quietly generous. He never won an Academy Award, an Oscar, and he didn't seem to care about winning one. Instead, he earned lasting respect from other actors and critics because he always did great work and brought honesty to every role he played. What he gave to American movies, especially Western films, left a mark that will never go away. He influenced many future actors and filmmakers. Directors like Martin Scorsese, Clint Eastwood, and Quentin Tarantino have said that Scott's work was really important in teaching them how to tell stories about characters and show moral complexity in films. Randolph Scott was married twice during his life, though he kept his personal life pretty private compared to his cowboy characters on screen. His first marriage happened in 1936 when he married Marion DuPont, a prominent American heiress and someone who competed in horse sports. Marion was a member of the famous DuPont family, one of the most powerful and wealthy families in American history. Her father, William DuPont Sr., was an important person who helped grow the family's business empire. Her great-grandfather, Eleuther Irénée DuPont de Nemours, was a French-born chemist and business owner who started the DuPont Company. The DuPont Company started making gunpowder and eventually grew into one of the biggest and most powerful chemical companies in the world. It played a huge role in American business and world trade. Interestingly, before Marion married Scott, she had been married before to George Somerville, a Virginia horse breeder and sportsman. In an unusual twist, Randolph Scott had been the best man at Marion's first wedding. This means they were close friends and knew each other well long before they fell in love. We don't know exactly how Scott and Marion went from being friends to getting married, but their marriage brought together two people from very different worlds. One was a Hollywood actor who was becoming famous, and the other was a high-society socialite who came from East Coast wealth and was really into horses and horse racing. Even though their marriage seemed glamorous and fancy, it didn't last very long. After only 3 years, the couple got divorced in 1939. They didn't have any children together. Some reports say that their lifestyles and personalities didn't match well, especially because Marion was so connected to Virginia horse country and Scott was focused on his movie career in California. But something interesting happened. Even after their divorce, Marion DuPont decided to keep using the last name Scott. This might mean she still cared about him or respected their time together. She went by Marion DuPont Scott for the rest of her life, which was almost 5 decades, until she died in 1983. During those years, she became a very respected person in American horse racing. She turned her estate called Montpelier in Virginia into a major center for training horses and holding competitions. Eventually, she gave it to the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Scott's second and last marriage was to actress Patricia Stillman, and this marriage was much longer and happier for him. The couple got married in 1944, right in the middle of World War II and when Scott's film career was going really well. Patricia was 21 years younger than Scott. She was born in 1919. And while she had acted in Hollywood for a little while, she soon stopped to focus on family life instead. Unlike his first marriage, Randolph Scott's marriage to Patricia was marked by lasting love, stability, and shared beliefs. They stayed devoted to each other for more than 4 decades, which was really rare in the entertainment business. It showed they had a very strong bond. In 1950, 6 years after they got married, the Scotts decided to grow their family by adopting 2 children, a daughter named Sandra and a son named Christopher. The decision to adopt instead of having biological children might have been because of personal, medical, or private reasons, but it fit with the couple's desire to have a quiet, family-centered life away from fame and attention. Even though Scott kept acting into the early 1960s, by the mid-1950s he was slowly working less, which gave him more time to focus on his home life. The family lived in Beverly Hills in a beautiful, stately home. And Scott, even though he was a legendary Western movie star, became known in his later years as a devoted husband and father. Patricia stayed with him until he died in 1987, and she lived for more than 10 years after that, passing away in 2001. Together, Randolph and Patricia Scott showed an image of dignified family life that was very different from the often messy personal stories of many other Hollywood stars. Their marriage, even though it stayed pretty low profile, lasted through good times and bad. It remains an understated but important part of Scott's personal story. The hidden lives of 6 Hollywood stars. In the golden age of Hollywood, how people saw you was everything. And few people understood this better than actor Randolph Scott. He was a towering figure in Western movies and a symbol of masculine toughness. Scott lived during a time when being openly gay in Hollywood could destroy your career overnight. In a rare moment of honesty later in his life, Scott reportedly talked about the personal struggles of several of his closest friends, men whose careers and public images often stood in complete contrast to their private lives. He named 6 actors he had known, each one a giant in the movie industry, who were gay but were forced by society's rules and pressure from movie studios to hide their true selves from the public. Cary Grant was probably the most famous name on Scott's list, and the person most closely connected to him. The two shared a famously close relationship during the 1930s and early 1940s. They lived together for over 10 years in a beach house in Santa Monica. The press called them bachelor roommates, and Grant and Scott were often photographed in home settings, relaxing by the pool or sharing meals. This gave people a glimpse into what many have thought was a romantic relationship that was carefully hidden under the disguise of friendship. Though both men eventually married women, people have wondered about their relationship for decades. For Scott, who stayed friends with Grant his whole life, the need to keep their truth hidden was a painful necessity of that time period. Montgomery Clift was another name Scott mentioned. He was one of Hollywood's most sensitive and emotionally raw actors. He was known for his tortured performances in films like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity. Clift's real-life emotional pain often matched the roles he played. Though he never openly said he was gay, Clift's sexuality was an open secret among Hollywood insiders. People who worked in the industry knew. He struggled with huge inner conflict made worse by what was expected of him in his job and by a devastating car accident in 1956 that left him physically and emotionally hurt. Randolph Scott, who saw Clift's self-doubt and sadness firsthand, felt deep sympathy for a man whose amazing talent was overshadowed by the impossibility of living openly as himself. Merv Griffin might be best remembered today as the friendly talk show host and entertainment businessman behind game shows like Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. But behind his nice public image was a man who was very guarded about his private life. Despite years of rumors and constant media questions, Griffin never publicly talked about his sexuality. Scott knew a different side of him, the side that had to carefully navigate two worlds, being a celebrity and keeping secrets. For Griffin, what was at stake wasn't only personal, but also financial and business-related, as he built a media empire at a time when being outed as gay could lead to complete ruin. Jim Nabors was beloved for playing the clumsy but sweet Gomer Pyle on The Andy Griffith Show and its spin-off Gomer Pyle, USMC. He was another actor Scott listed as someone who had to hide his true identity. Nabors had a long-term relationship with Stan Cadwallader, and the two were finally able to get married in 2013, just before Nabors died. But during the height of his fame, Nabors had to carefully manage how the public saw him to avoid any scandal. A persistent false rumor claimed that Nabors and Rock Hudson had gotten married, a joke that really upset Nabors and showed how toxic and dangerous Hollywood's gossip could be for gay entertainers.